Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll talk a lot about the Saints, LSU Tigers, Tulane Green Wave, and to break it down, two of our best. Brett Martel of the Associated Press, Gus Kattengell of ESPN 100.3 here in New Orleans. Guys, welcome to the show. As always, thanks so much for coming down. And always like to start off letting folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. I can only catch this guy for an hour a day now because we're on the same time. Gus, tell us about everything you're involved in, my friend.
Yeah, man, each and every weekday, 12 to 3 is the Sports Hangover, going on, what, 10 years, something like that?
Yeah.
I've lost track of it. But
actually, Larry and I were talking about that today on the show.
I know, it's crazy to think that it's been that long, but thanks to you, as a matter of fact. So I tell you, it's been fun, and it's easily one of the most anticipated falls that I can remember. Not just, of course, with the Saints, but storylines galore with college football in and around the area. Prep football, one of the best classes, 2019, that I can remember. And Pelicans. I mean, it's crazy. We talked to Alvin Gentry this week, and I'm amped. I mean, I see people walking the dog in the morning wearing a Pelican shirt. So there's a lot of excitement. I'm as excited as I've been, so it's real easy that 3 hours fly by like that. And then you got Tulane that starts on Thursday.
Of course, you're part of that broadcast team. Talk about it.
Year 9 as the sideline reporter, going back again for another season doing women's basketball as well. But lots of hope up there in uptown New Orleans when it comes to their football team, and it all starts next Thursday.
Yeah, rightly so. Brett, welcome back. Tell us a little bit about the Associated Press.
Yeah, so the AP is a global news service based in New York City, and I'm the Louisiana sports correspondent, and covering all the major sports in the state, but primarily the Saints and the Pelicans and LSU football, basketball, and any other AP top 25 type game in football or basketball, and as much Tulane and D1 as I can get to. So.
There you go. Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate y'all being part of the show tonight. Guys, want to start off just an overview of what you saw. You guys are at practice every day up until, again, they headed out to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers this week. Your overall thoughts on how this team has looked thus far?
I get made fun of because I'm told I'm drinking Kool-Aid. That's kind of how I sort of feel about it. They're as deep as I've ever seen. They have as much young talent as I've ever seen. The linebacking core, Dome Patrol is what I've been saying on my show. It's in terms of more than one linebacker.
Qualify that.
Yeah, well, more than one linebacker. Yes, you had Vilma, you had Lofton come in and do. I'm talking more than one back, multiple backs that can make plays. You have guys in Demario Davis, Anzalone, we've seen in practice, and even in practice against the Chargers. Marcus Williams gets an interception. I'll get to him in a sec. Anzalone tips it. You're seeing linebackers that can cover. That's something this team hasn't had in a long, long time. D-line that's too deep. You're looking at an offense that's young, that they've not only reloaded, but, man, if Traquan Smith keeps – I think he's the second best receiver on this team. And he's a third-round pick, another third-round steal. So you have a rejuvenation of an offense that I think is going to score points this year. You have a deep, young, athletic defense that can go. And no longer when I'm making my previews for Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football, it's Drew Brees and the Saints. It's Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, Cam Jordan. I mean, it's a handful, a half dozen of players that are good and are foundational pieces. So, man, Again, I'm as excited as I've ever been looking at it because of the potential that this team has.
Brett, when Gus passed you the pitcher Kool-Aid, did you pour it in your cup and drink it down?
No, because I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, anybody, first of all, who saw the last preseason game when they lost to the Cardinals will say to themselves, well, what is Gus talking about?
Right.
But what he's talking about is, and Sean Payton admitted as much after the last game, he was really not coaching to win that game. He was coaching to isolate players and situations. He's looking at like the last 15, 20 guys that are going to make this team, and they're not scheming. They're not spending a week scheming with the starters to stop specifically or beat specifically what the opponent does, and they're basically scheming to isolate players on their own team in situations where they can succeed or fail, and then they can go back to the film and watch them all. And that's why I think for the average fan, it was so hard to stay engaged and not change the channel, which I heard from a lot of people they did. And I said, well, don't worry about it, because preseason is really for the coaches. It's not even necessarily for you unless you're a total junkie and you want to see who the last 10 or 15 guys on the roster are going to be that may or may not play. And the other thing is, I've covered enough of these camps to see how many times guys have looked great in camp. There's been a surprise camp MVP, and maybe they made the team because of that, but then maybe they weren't really that influential in the fortunes of the team, good or bad. And so I don't want to overplay any great performances in practice, because it's just not the same as a game. And not only that, it's not the same as a close game in the final 5 minutes, because that's a whole different level of stress and tension. But they do have a lot of young talent. I mean, everything Gus said is potentially spot on. And so I think that I don't want to undersell them. I just want to be cautiously optimistic, because they also have to have good luck with injuries. The offensive line looks fantastic, but I don't know about the depth in the offensive line. I don't know what Jermon Bushrod has left. Some of these other guys, and if they have an unfortunate injury there, that could be trouble. If Trey Hendrickson gets hurt, I don't know what they're going to do on defensive end, because we don't know what Marcus Davenport's capable of. He's missed a lot of time, and he's very raw. And then, of course, Okafor, we don't know how long he's going to be out. So I think the pass rush could be another area of caution.
For me, and I'll ask you this question and see what you guys think the answer may be. The interior defensive line, to me, is still a big question mark. I don't think they've answered that. I watched the Cardinals push the Saints defensive line 9 yards into the end zone in a preseason game. Now, going back and looking at it a second time, they did block up the defensive line. They really took the linebackers in the secondary into the end zone. But really, your linemen should be the first line of defense there. Right. It's been my issue with the defensive line since the offseason. I don't know if they've addressed that. You guys have seen them. Your thoughts on the interior of the defensive line? Remember, they got to stop the run. They got to get off the field on third down.
Absolutely. First off, you know who Bubbles the chimpanzee is, right? Michael Jackson's chimpanzee.
Absolutely.
That's what Todd Graffanini, voice of the Green Wave, keeps texting me and calling me when I go on the show and talk about the defense. He goes, a chimp.
There's his text right now.
Exactly. He says, a chimpanzee can do what you're doing. Because where's the 85 Bears defense that you're talking about? Brett brings up a good point. I guess what I look at it is like this, right? So the first 2 drives against the Jaguars, you saw them give up 132 yards, 10 first downs. That's great. They still wind up the game with 6 sacks, a forced turnover, whatever. That's that depth I'm talking about. Once their starters went away, your starters, the backups kind of matched. With the Cardinals thing that was interesting, remember, they did start the game 3 and out. Also, I think to your point with that defensive line, how it goes, that could have been a 14, 17, 21-0 first quarter by the Saints offense if they had a quarterback that did anything right. I mean, they had 4 turnovers early on, and if you remember, they went right down the field, running the football. We're in the red zone. Thomas Breeze hasn't hit Thomas near sideline, miss him that way. Meredith probably catches a touch pass from Drew Brees to continue to drive. So it's maybe a little bit different. And to Brett's point, that was the first time I ever saw Anzalone, middle linebacker, making the calls, doing those things.
I think it's the first time he's ever been a middle linebacker.
Right, so we're seeing different things, to his point, to kind of see where it goes. You're talking about the interior defensive line. Sheldon Rankins touched on it himself. With him and Yamada, Tyler Davidson, that is their main goal, to try to do that. Remember, you haven't seen Cam Jordan yet get into that action. Trey Hendrickson is a guy almost like Rob Ninkovich is the name that keeps being brought up. I think he's solid there. But Okafor being back at practice this week, at least in pads, that means I'll see him for Tampa. Davenport will do something. And so you do have that depth.
Well,
Plus,
I get the
remember-
pass
yeah.
rush, Gus.
Right.
I'm worried about stopping the run in the interior of the defensive line. I think they may be able to rush the passer from the inside. I just wonder what's going to happen when teams want to run the ball down their throat. Do they have that
worst
player
case scenario,
next to either Onyemata or Rankins?
I don't know if they have it in a D-line interiorly, but I think you might see what you saw the last couple of years where they tried to have a 3-safety look, and one of that safeties is that extra linebacker. Kurt Coleman can go be a guy to maybe be a run stopper. Plus, I think you have some linebackers that maybe aren't on the field or in certain times that would be on the field that could be run stoppers. Would you say they're as physical at linebacker that you can have? I mean, I think I can see Mario Davis, and I can see some of those
I would
guys
agree with that.
Yeah, and they have some pretty good speed too.
Yeah.
So
what about that interior of that defensive line?
Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Don't pass it this way.
I would say that Rankins and Onyemata are really promising players. Davison is a smart player. I really like him a lot. It's hard to know where his ceiling is. He's a guy I want to root for and see him do well. But he hasn't by any means been a dominant force yet. He just sporadically makes good plays.
It's probably the weakest one, like you're saying.
No, I think it is.
And Onyemata again is. He's a great story to be doing as well as he has, but there's only so much you can expect from a guy who grew up playing soccer in Nigeria and then learned how to play American-style football in Canada and is in his third year as playing NFL rules.
And is he really a run stuffer, or is he a guy that, again, can rush the passer?
He could be, but I don't know about... I don't know about rushing the passer. I mean, he could be a guy because of his physical, raw physical skills that once he gets his technique down better, and he's been working with Pete Jenkins in the offseason, who's a renowned defensive line coach that LSU has used a lot, obviously, to try to get to refine his skills a little more. He could surprise us, but that doesn't mean it's not a question mark at this point. I mean, we haven't seen enough of him in a game this season to tell how much he's improved over last year. And I think hopes are that Rankins also will take another step in his third season. But that was a really bad look, that 9-yard run that the Cardinals had for a touchdown where the entire defense just got pushed back basically 7 or 8 yards.
It was 9. I counted them.
Yeah. So, I guess if they met him at the line of scrimmage, they got pushed for 9 yards. That could have been one bad play in the first play in the second quarter of a second preseason game that they can look at the film, they can get embarrassed, and they can say, okay, we didn't have any leverage on that play. We need to never let that happen again.
Stallworth, Bromley, Lawrence. Who comes in? Who's backing up there?
I'll tell you right now, I kind of like Stallworth just because of his size, especially when he talks about that run stopping is something that he likes to do. And if I had to take another sip of Kool-Aid there, that was kind of sort of a staple, almost unfortunately, of this defense last year, wasn't it? Where those first 2 drives, the opposing team, but then they did something that the Saints defense had been in years past. They made adjustments. And, the Green Bay game, I can go on and on with a couple of games last year where, man, the opposing team went right down the field, scored, and the Saints are down 7-0. And then there was stuff the rest of the game. So I think to Brett's point, like he was saying, let's wait till we see some adjustments. I'm curious, Saturday night. Let's see how they do this against the dress rehearsal, because we'll get more of an idea of that rotation. We'll see Cam Jordan. We'll see maybe Marcus Davenport. That's the plan. So we'll get a little better view.
See, I buy into them being able to be effective on passing downs, because if they can get a pass rush from Davenport or Okafor, you can move Cam Jordan inside with Rankins or whoever else you choose. And of course, you can always manufacture pressure because you're so interchangeable at linebacker and in the secondary. I just worry about, again, getting off the field on third downs and stopping the run. Those were 2 key problems for this team last year. To your point, I would agree. Again, they adjusted really well last year.
Yeah, that was one of the thknow that really stood out to me. You can kind of see the growth in that defense and that confidence level. And I think one of the other things, too, is I don't know if it's expectation levels, but unless you're the 85 Bears, like Graf likes to always bring up all the time, they're going to get first downs. They're going to put up some points. It's, to your point, can you get off the field in key situations, third down? It's third, fourth quarter, game's getting a little tight. Can you give Drew Brees that extra possession? And I think one thing, not to take away from what your point is saying, but if this team can turn the ball over, and we're starting to see that. Kurt Coleman's a guy who can pick off the ball. Marcus Williams, 2 interceptions in the practices against the Chargers. Lattimore, you saw last year, can make interceptions. You're seeing the linebackers being able to make some passes. Anzalone's had a pick in practice. You can see that. Cam Jordan gets. If they can turn the ball over, so what if the other team drives down there and they can turn it over at the 20 or 10-yard line? So that's an added element that in 2009 led them to the Super Bowl.
39 turnovers.
Yeah.
That was the big
Not
reason
just
why.
that, but also being able to have good red zone defense.
Absolutely.
I mean, because they ranked in the 20s in yards allowed that season. I think 23rd or something like that, and still won a championship. It's not yards allowed. It's giving up field goals and getting timely turnovers. And Sean likes to talk about the hidden yardage, and special teams. Right. Just, fair catching when you're supposed to, not letting it bounce, returning it when you're supposed to. Just kind of, not giving away free yards to the other team.
Brett, break down the linebackers and secondary. We hear a lot about interchangeability, about great depth at both of those lines of defense for the second and third tier. What are your thoughts?
You're talking about the
linebackers and the secondary, the interchangeability, the depth at both of those.
Right. Yeah. Tons of depth at linebacker. And the secondary, again, if they stay healthy, that looks good too. I mean, when you go from P.J. Williams, and of course they brought in Patrick Robinson to bolster that. So.
Kid Jameson looks pretty good right now too, huh? The rookie.
He's getting better.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Arthur Millette is going to be a tough cut for them in that secondary.
It will be, yeah. And he was shaken up in the last game, so hopefully he'll come back strong for just the local fans that are following him. But they have the potential to have a considerable depth there, which not only helps, I think, in terms of if someone gets injured, but even, trying to keep them in the rotation. And keep guys fresh if you're able to activate them on game day. I mean, maybe they'll have some tough decisions, and the inactives will actually be an interesting story every week because of the depth they have. The linebacker definitely seems to be as deep a position as they've had in quite a while, as long as, again, Anzalone comes back healthy. You've added Demario Davis, and, you still have A.J. Klein, and, and you still have some of the other veterans. I mean, Stupar looks healthy and pretty good, and Craig Robertson. Yeah, so I think that the thing about their depth is that it's one thing to have depth, but you also want to have really stud players who make huge plays.
Do they have stud players making?
I don't know. I mean, maybe Demario Davis and Anzalone can be those types of guys. A.J. Klein was very competent, and he was an asset, but I didn't see him making a lot of huge plays last year. So, maybe it was just because it was his first year in this system. But of course, he came in as a backup to Luke Kuechly. So he wasn't, I don't know if they have a Luke Kuechly, but we'll see how Demario Davis works in this scheme. I mean, he was very reliable for the Jets, but it's hard to tell when he's playing for a team that was struggling like they were.
Right. Gus, last 2 years I've said that Robertson is the best linebacker on this team. I can't say that this year, right? Okay. Because of what they've done, Anzalone being healthy, again, as the mention about Demario Davis. I'd like you to take the same question. The depth on that linebacker position, the depth in the secondary. What do you like?
Dude, it's incredible. I mean, especially in the first 2 weeks of training camp practices, it was literally a linebacker a day that was making a play. I referenced Anzalone making that interception. We've seen Demario Davis kind of be that intimidating sort of force, and he just wants to hit somebody. I think he brings a certain element of toughness that's probably going to be needed there. What's Klein's biggest asset that he brings is, I think, smarts, knowing where to set up people and do that. I'm with you. Do you see that ability to go play by play or sideline to sideline and do that? But I think for the most part, he helps line up. I think something that's very important to bring up in that linebacking core is you have 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 that have played either Mike or have made the calls, right? Klein's done it. Demario Davis has worn the green sticker. Anzalone's now done it. And they're trying to see if he can do it. We know Craig Robinson's done it. Stupar. I mean, we can go on and on and on of linebackers that can make the calls. And I think what it helps is, you may know that, right? But unless the quarterback is kind of looking, okay, who has the dot now and who is the Mike? It's just because I'm calling the play doesn't mean I'm the Mike. You can change it in different plays to where it's one guy going in another direction. So I do think that's a huge asset. Look, I've talked to some reporters that they think Anzalone is the most talented of the linebackers physically. But Craig Robinson's crazy to me. He still had one of the best bites in camp, right, where he says everybody's a dog and getting ready and being emotional and have that fight in them, which I thought was interesting. But he's a guy that when you look at since he's been here, every year the team keeps bringing in linebackers. And you know what? Sean Payton year after year says, if there's a down where I need to trust somebody, there he is, 52. Yep. I mean, he trusts Craig Robinson.
Well, they brought him in for special teams.
Well, that's the point.
Okay.
To the point of depth. Him, Stupar, I mean, you had a handful of players that were supposed to be on kick returns and punt coverage. Start at your middle. Manti Te'o, you want him to be, look, and he's pushing to be maybe the starting middle linebacker. But that's good because you brought him into backup spots. So that's why I say it's one of the deepest, really, to me, since the Dome Patrol, because you have players that can be starters, I think, somewhere else.
To your point, great starting linebackers for the Dome Patrol, maybe not the great depth. That when you look at it across the board, the interchangeability and the depth is probably the key to this group more than anything else. Just my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, remember, when you look at that 4 group, man, you had the speed and the pass rush. Jackson can really kind of do it all. Swilling was more of that speed, pass rush thing. But Sam Mills was he was the general, right? I mean, he was the guy that could get everybody lined up, and Johnson was that run star. Everyone knew that role, to do it. So I'm interested to see how they're going to use him because, like I said, you pick a day, and I'll tell you how the linebackers were used that day. It's not this is what's going to be constant. These are the same 3. Sometimes it's 2. Sometimes it's 1. Sometimes it's 4. I mean, it really honestly depends what Dennis Allen wants to do.
Brett, backup quarterback. Always a big conversation. Okay, you hope you never have to see one. Do they have one on this team? Do they have a guy they can rely on if something was to happen to Drew Brees?
Well, Savage probably will be okay if he has a whole week to work on a specific scheme. Hill has the potential to be an exciting player. The thing with him is that you can't rely on him yet. I mean, he just proved it in the last game that he's too erratic. But it is, true, as Gus alluded to earlier in the show, one of his turnovers came in that long pass, which was overthrown and really not a great pass, and who knows if the receiver gave up on it too early. But the other turnovers all came after he had marched them across midfield and they were threatening to score. Right? And in fact, the last turnover came after he completed 5 passes in a row in the 2-minute drill, right? Only to get sacked and have the ball go 15 yards the other way. So, he just might not be ready yet. I mean, based on what we've seen so far, you certainly can't trust him. Maybe he'll come farther.
Can you invest in him at 28 as a potential starter or heir apparent?
Well, only because you're seeing quarterbacks now. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of mileage on him, and we'll see how much.
But he was often injured at BYU.
Yeah, he was, and he also, they're using him on special teams where he could get injured again.
Which will cease if he really becomes the backup quarterback.
Yeah, if he really becomes the backup quarterback, they can't do that. But I mean, I think that a guy could easily be an effective starter from age 35 to 37. I mean, 7 years is a significant amount of time. And in the current NFL with the current rules, I mean,
if you are a pocket passer and have great accuracy, and his attribute is his ability to run and move and throw on the move. I don't know if that guy has longevity. That's being devil's advocate.
No, you're right, because he would use the run kind of like Cam Newton uses it, or really. He kind of reminds me, I grew up in New England, of Steve Grogan. I don't know if you guys remember him.
Great comparison, taking me back.
So, he could be that kind of quarterback. But, Grogan's career was cut short by getting really beat up.
And he had pretty good accuracy, though.
Yeah, Grogan. He did. So, though Hill has looked accurate on a number of passes, I mean, he had that one bad interception, but 3 of his turnovers were on fumbles. Twice when it slipped out of his hand without even being hit, and then one when he got sacked. I mean, that was just a lack of awareness in that situation. But I don't know. I mean, I think Hill has a lot of potential, and he's just not that reliable yet. And so you have to hope that Savage can be the guy that Houston thought he was when they were thinking of starting him ahead of Deshaun Watson, if they need him.
Yes.
I've approached this on the air a little differently. And I look at it as the common sentence that's ever said by a Saints fan or the media. If Drew Brees goes down, they're done. It's over. Why? And what I mean by that is if you have a football team that's made moves in the draft like they did with Marcus Davenport, you're telling me you're a player away, right? People are talking about it. There's a banner at the facility that says, prove them right. All right. You're talking big, right? I mean, everyone's patting you on the back. You're a Super Bowl contending team. Well, why are you selling yourself short at the backup quarterback role, the most important position on this football team?
Agreed.
I want to know, and I want to see, and I want to hear that if that guy goes down, yes, we're not the Saints because he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I understand that. Who won the Super Bowl last year? They were the #1 seed. I remember talking with you during the season last year. I don't know why everyone sold them short. I get Carson Wentz went down. Foles went to a playoff, lost to the Saints, but still led a team to a playoff that season in 2013. They were the #1 seed because the whole team was good. I get what Wentz did. I hear you. But if you're here and telling me included with the Kool-Aid, that this team has offensive power everywhere, that this team has a young defensive line. You like the pass rush. I like the safety. You may like the corner. And all that. Well, aren't you still a good team? So why are you putting yourself in a position of what we saw Friday? I get it's preseason, but there was 2 players on that field that I don't know can go give me a field goal if I need a field goal. Now, there's potential. You can see that. I agree with Brett. Tom Savage is Tom Savage. But to me, he's a guy that when you see step on the field, you're hoping he doesn't turn the ball over, right? He's not going to try to make a play. He's going to try to read it, just get it to who coach told you to. I mean, go ahead and bring out the poster boards that you see in college football, because that's how I feel about him. He's limited. He's not going to go out there and make plays for you. Hill can do that, but, to kind of what Brett's alluding to, that was his second preseason game, first time he's ever started a preseason game, first time he's ever taken on guys that are going to be probably starting on Sundays. He's that raw, that young. He's never gone through a whole camp where he's pushing for a spot or something. So to your question that you asked him, yes, I think you can invest in him a little bit because he does have that potential. He's got a rocket of an arm. Learn the footwork, learn the mechanisms. These quarterback challenges, he probably didn't even get it and realize it. Why do you think Drew does that so much? Because every single day he's trying to get more and more accurate. Not strong-armed, accurate. So all these little things help him. So I'm scared, though, at that second backup spot. I mean, I honestly am focusing on the next 2 because I would not be surprised if they go find somebody else and make a phone call because, again, if you're building a team that you're telling me is a Super Bowl contending team, then my question to you is, can that guy guide you to a Super Bowl?
Do you buy into what he's saying? That, again, that maybe the phone starts ringing when they go down the final cut. They're asking about a Teddy Bridgewater. They're asking about a Mike Glennon. They're asking, even if it is a 1-year rental, and it could be, with a Bridgewater, it's a $5 million 1-year rental. It's a free agent next year, in case, again, the unthinkable happens.
I can totally see that happening. It just depends on. I really think they believe that if Savage isn't playing in a vanilla scheme in a preseason game, that if he's playing in a regular season scheme where he knows where his checkdowns are and they're running the ball a lot more and the first team offensive line isn't there the whole game, that he's going to look a little different than he's looked.
But he's getting schemed too by the defense.
True, that's true. That's true. But Sean, generally, if you look at Saints offense under Sean Payton, even when Luke McCown had to fill in Carolina, I think that their offense has been really sound, and they have a better offensive line and a better running game now.
Yes.
Especially if they make it past the first 4 weeks of the season. We don't know when they would need a backup quarterback.
Right.
So the other thing is, assuming that Drew does get hurt, a lot of it comes down to the timing of when he does get hurt, because even throughout the regular season, if Hill is on the roster, Hill will be able to continue to grow and mature, especially leading the scout team in practice and so forth, and maybe he'll be ready 10 weeks from now in a way that he's not ready now.
I kind of take Gus's tack on this, because if you have great depth everywhere else, the most important position on the field, why would you not make sure that you have great depth there? It's not like the Saints are in salary cap hell like they were years ago, where they couldn't maneuver to get anything. They have room, if necessary, to add a player that again, could be there in case there's an emergency. I think it'll be interesting to see as they get down to the cutdowns, if they start taking a look at maybe some of these veteran guys to bring in.
Sean says it every day. He said it Wednesday after the first practice against the Chargers. He said, we're not set with our roster. We're looking at other rosters, other cuts, so if he's looking at other players, he brought in Brandon Tate and Floyd to return kicks. You don't think he has an eye out there, Justin? And again, look at what happens when Breeze goes out on Saturday. If you're seeing an offense that just looks inept, or you just don't, it's your gut. That's all I'm saying is it's just my gut. When I see that out there, I'm just like, again, it's to me, it all of a sudden becomes the weakest part. But, look, I get it. If he's not under center, it's a different team. I hear you. But if you have a team that you think can win the Super Bowl,
Yep, I would agree.
It's just that quarterback is a little more complicated because Sean wants to have confidence in someone who knows who can run his offense every snap of the game, and it's
But you have two guys that have never run his offense.
Right.
That's what I mean. That's my point.
And one guy who really hasn't played the position in the NFL.
I honestly think if he gets injured, if it's an extended period of time, like you would probably just call Chicago and be like, well, how much for Chase?
Well, yeah, right.
I mean, that's what my point is. I would then go get somebody that has run this offense, for further along in the season or something like that.
You felt comfortable with McCown, somewhat comfortable with Chase.
Right.
I don't know if you feel real comfortable with these guys right here.
I don't. I'm telling you.
I know I don't. I know I don't. But I'm not making the decision.
Right, no, exactly.
Luckily I'd like to make the decision. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back and we'll continue the conversation about the Saints. We'll get into some Tulane and LSU as well. Also get to your phone calls. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports tonight. Brett Martel, the Associated Press, Gus Kattengell of ESPN 100.3 FM here in New Orleans are our guests.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Gus Kattengell of ESPN 100.3 FM here in New Orleans. Also, Brett Martel, the Associated Press, on the panel. We'll continue Saints for a few more minutes, then we'll jump into Tulane, then we'll go to LSU. Guys, running back, looks like they made the decision in terms of who will take the spot when Ingram goes out for his 4 games. Jonathan Williams has played very, very well for this team, so much they could let West go. I've talked about the fact vested veterans, they don't want to leave them on the roster for the first game if they're not going to be there for the whole season because they have to pay them the whole season. I mean, that's legitimate, okay? They've been like that, when they've had money, when they didn't have money to spare. The battle to me now is Boston Scott and Shane Vereen. And as much as like Shane Vereen because of his pedigree, championship teams, we know he can catch the ball at the backfield. There's something to be said about this young player, Boston Scott, getting him touches, his ability to catch the ball. I don't want to put the Sproles tag on him, but again, there is some Sproles, a little bit of Sproles in him. And then his ability on special teams as well. Guys, who wins that job? Gus?
Behind Jonathan Williams?
Boston Scott or Vereen that's going to really back up.
One of the things that Sean Payton always says is if you can do more than one role, he's probably going to lean in that direction. It's interesting, based off the 2 practices so far against the Chargers, apparently Brandon Tate did well returning. But games matter, right? I mean, it's one thing to be able to do it at practice. Can you really tackle? Can you really hit or not? Games, Boston Scott's returned the ball solid. I want to say it's always almost seems like to the 30-yard line.
And don't you need 2? And, of course, he can return kickoffs as well.
And that's the other thing. And I think that's the one thing we have to remember, too. What am I asking from that back? Okay? Alvin's going to get the touches. And when Alvin needs a breather, it's going to be Jonathan Williams. I know everyone keeps saying who replaces him. No one's replacing the Ingram role. Sean Payton's just not going to be like, hey, okay, whatever 15, 10 touches Ingram had, this guy is going to fill in for that. No, you brought in 3 new pass catchers in Watson and Traquan Smith and Cam Meredith. I need to get Thomas the ball. I'd love to give Kamara a few more touches. You're not going to kill him. You're giving him 5 more a game, and he wants it, and he can score a touchdown for you. So why wouldn't you? So what do I need from that back? I need Williams to run it a few times, half dozen times.
He needs to be your physical back.
Exactly right. Go do that. So what do I need from the guy after that? Hey, well, I saw Boston Scott do Friday against the Cardinals. What did he have? Like 4 or 5 runs? But out of those runs, they're like 26 yards. So it was 4 yards a pop, 5 yards a pop. That's great. He comes in to spell a breather and gets me 4 or 5 yards. You did your job. And then if you can return a punt and kick in the game a couple yards, or to your point, be there to back up Brandon Tate for that, that's kind of what I go. So I am kind of leaning to him. He's a draft pick. He's young. And more importantly, I think the kid's hungry. And just something about him that he wants to perform and he wants to show it. And I'm taller than him, so I'm rooting for him.
Well, there you go.
So
Yeah. Scott's one of those guys that you definitely don't want to underestimate based on his stature. Nothing that they've asked him to do has looked too big for him.
Right. It's a good point.
He had about, I forget the exact number, but it was close to 120 total yards in the last preseason game if you include his kickoff returns. But he's been able to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's been able to do a variety of different runs. And just from talking to him after practice, I get the sense that he gets it. But, I don't know him well enough really, and I'm not in the meeting rooms, and I can't. I have to qualify that I don't really have. I can't really say that with a lot of authority. It's just in my experience of covering the NFL for going on 13 years is that he has a certain kind of common awareness and savvy about him for a young player that seems a little unusual to me. So
and he's cheap.
Right, and they invested a draft pick in him, but it was a late round draft pick, and so it wouldn't kill them to see if they could get him on the practice squad. But I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to put him on. They'd have to put him on waivers to put him on the practice squad. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else.
Right. I don't think they expose him. I really don't.
Yeah. So, and if you can't expose him, then
that's your career. There's your answer.
Then there's your answer.
If you feel that you can't, exactly.
Yeah, right. Because I think you could put Shane Vereen out there, and if you needed him in week 2 or 3, he may be there unless there's an injury with another team.
Right.
A young player that's not making a lot of money that again they can fill a role, especially on special teams. That might be something that teams will be looking at.
It's interesting because the Saints did what we were talking about last segment at running back that I was talking about in quarterback. Why did they go get Terrence West? Why did they go get Shane Vereen? Right? They brought in running backs. They had Trey Edmonds. You had Jonathan Williams.
Yes.
Why'd you do that? Because, again, if Alvin Kamara has to go tie his shoe, had a bad burrito, needs to step off the field for a bit, or gets concussed like he did against Atlanta, you would have had backs with not a lot of experience. So I do think they went for West and Vereen simply because of that.
Right.
And also maybe they didn't see enough from Edmonds. They moved him to fullback. But I think that was, to your point, and my point I was saying, like at quarterback, well, how come you didn't go get veteran?
Right.
I guess they did with Savage, but I'm talking about in knowing that offense and everything.
But these guys have been in the system now the whole offseason.
Right.
So if something was to happen and they are on the street, you're bringing in somebody that has experience.
Which is why I
within your
think
system.
when it comes to Scott, guys, what am I asking him to do? You know what I mean? And to his point, he's right. I don't get that sense and feel that my head's swimming. If anything, he's Pac-Man. He wants to keep eating the little white balls. He wants to prove himself a lot more. And look, there's one thing that's undeniable. The last 2-3 seasons this team's tried to do with a roster turnover. They want guys that are hungry. They want guys that are out to prove themselves. And they want guys that are going to be given that opportunity when they're given it and do the best they can out of it. So I'd probably lean to him.
Let's shift gears to Tulane, and we'll take you, Gus, on this. Man, I think everybody that's watched this program since Willie Fritz has got there has watched this program incrementally get better. Can they take the next step? Is this the year they take the next step in your mind?
A lot of people feel that. Phil Steele, Phil Steele from the
yeah,
magazine,
absolutely.
right? He absolutely thinks they're a bold team. He said 6-7 wins. So it's amazing to think that they kick off the season, Brett, against Wake Forest a week from, this week, next Thursday. And when they took on Wake Forest, Willie Fritz's first season, they couldn't have full practices for the most part because they didn't have enough scholarship players. I was talking to the Graph about this. They had 3 scholarship receivers. They didn't have the numbers. They couldn't have a lot of practice because they weren't too deep. They were 1 deep. So if they got hurt at practice, you were done. Fast forward into the 3rd season. Have an extension that you got in the offseason, again, probably to help recruiting, that you're not going to go anywhere. But you can. Your eyeballs tell it to you, right? Like you can walk out to Saints practice and see athleticism, some speed, there's some depth. You walk out and watch Tulane, guy's a little bit bigger, there's a little more athleticism, and more importantly, I think for the first time, easily since Ryan Griffin, you have a legit quarterback, a good quarterback. I think last year, the guy's head was swimming trying to learn this offense, and on guts and on just athletic ability, helped lead this team almost to a bowl game. I mean, there were games last year that we saw him hurt, go to the sideline, gut it out, convert 4th downs running, knowing he's going to get popped, and show a leadership on this team and this school I hadn't seen since I was on the sideline, flat out. He wasn't going to lose.
That's strong.
And then when you go to this year, the Manning Passing Academy, he had one of the best quotes there. No brakes, all gas, or vice versa, all gas, no brakes. In other words, he wants it. He wants that expectation. So it's a certain swagger that I haven't seen in Uptown since I've been on the sidelines, like legit, that actually feel that way. And I think you look at the season last year where they lost a couple games in the middle of the year, but they could have folded easy. Yes. Same old Tulane. Then they wound up winning 2 of the last 3, and on that last 3, they were a yard short from a bowl. So they didn't quit. So he's got those players not quitting. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen in the Fritz era.
Officially, they were a yard short. We know they weren't.
Right.
Is that a motivation for this team?
I think it absolutely has. No doubt about it. No doubt.
Brett, can they take the next step in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to forget after the season goes by that how close they really came to being bowl eligible, which was either, like you said, a half a yard or a bad call away on the last play of the last game. And to have that quarterback returning, healthy and with another year of knowledge of Willie Fritz's offense, I think is a big deal. Willie Fritz traditionally has been a very good special teams coach. They still struggled a little bit with the consistency in his first couple years, but it was his first couple years. So you're getting to the point now where he's almost all those kids are really his.
And that comes with depth, too.
Yeah, and so and so he's got depth. He's got people that have been in his program for a few years. He's got a quarterback who has real skill on the field as well as in leadership. More experienced receivers. I don't really know about their defense, though. I've got to say.
I don't think anybody does, right, Gus?
That's the key. I would say it's so odd that we're going to this game on Thursday, and I could always count the last 2 years for sure. Tulane was probably going to make it a close game. Even against the upper echelon teams in the American. I'm talking to UCFs, your Memphis and stuff. They would keep it close. The problem was Tulane couldn't get a first down, couldn't score, would miss a field goal. So the game that was close early in the first into the second, they hit a touchdown. Then you go 3 and out, and then the defense spent too much time on the field, spent too much time on the field. I couldn't tell you who the leader on this team is right now. Now, teamer from Brother Martin High School, local. Donnie Lewis.
By the way.
Of course I did. Donnie Lewis, I think, is pretty good at corner as well. But you've had guys the last 2 years, fellas, that have gone into the NFL, whether it's Pari Nickerson in the corner. Jared Franklin didn't, go in the league. But, I mean, that guy played. I mean, your starts. I'm talking starts. Like, you would look next to their name. It's double-digit, 20, 30 starts and stuff. You're losing that. You got a guy, 2 guys from the D-line the last 2 years have gone. Tenzel Smarts with the Rams. I mean, those are guys, you talk about D-tackle with the Saints, the run stuffer, guy that would stop Navy's wishbone and stuff. They're young, I'm told, right? I'm not told. I mean, they are young, but I'm told they're athletic and they're talented. So it's funny because we kind of sit there and say that when we're about to talk about LSU, we're convinced because of Dave Aranda. They're good and they're talented. Right. Even though last year, remember, that was one of the things that we would talk about during the season. They don't have any snaps when you lose 4 guys to the top 2 picks or high picks in the first 2 rounds. Right. They can be 5-star, 4-star guys, but they need snaps. That's my concern. They may be more talented than the guys that have gone into the NFL. They don't have the snaps. They don't have the experience just yet. So for the first time in a long time, guys, it's going to be the Tulane offense that I think is going to be key for them to win early.
You know, Brett, one thing that you can hang your hat on is the continuity within the coaching staff, not losing any coaches. I mean, how many times does that happen in college football where everybody's coming back? So, again, the same voices in that locker room.
Yeah, and stability, I don't know, it can be overrated, but in this case, I don't think it is. I think that what Tulane really needs is stability here, because they looked like they have looked like they are going in the right direction for 2 years running, and so I would really like to see how this staff can pull it together this year. I mean, every now and then having a new voice in the mix can help. I mean, we saw how Greg Williams helped the Saints coming in as a new defensive coordinator in 2009, and you know, so it just depends there. You went to Brother Martin High School, is that?
Yeah, you got to bring that up.
I'm surprised you didn't
Hard to believe that.
Is there somebody on the Saints who went to Brother Martin?
Yeah, you know, there's a couple of Brother Martin guys here. But no, you know what's interesting? You talk about stability, what helps.
Right.
We talk about it with LSU, we talk with the Saints, talk with Brother Martin.
He said it 5 times.
The ability.
Can we throw some De La Salle in there? Where was your high school?
Well, it was Hebron Academy. I was way up north in Maine. So.
The ability to coach players up.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
The connection between Taron Onkalad and Jonathan Banks, dude, a year ago, he was like, he's either going to drop it or run the wrong route. And now that's a connection that it's money. I saw a practice this week in which Banks, 3-step drop, in rhythm, back foot hit, launches a 25-yard out, started walking after he released it to advance the ball because he was going to be caught. And sure enough, it hit on the outside corner, and it was him, Onkalad. So that's something they haven't been able to do. The passing game solely was lacking, and that was the problem, that I don't think the coaching staff and Fritz had the confidence on third and long to go ahead, air it out, and do it. Almost to the point where last year they found out by default, guys. I would put, you know, my jaw of Kool-Aid on the line when they were down and had trouble starting games, which is something that Willie Fritz says this year they got to change, because they made good comebacks against Memphis and some of these other teams, Cincinnati, in the second half. But in the first half, they were down by 20 points or something because they couldn't score and they couldn't get first downs. Well, last year when they did that, that opened it up in the second half. They had no choice. That's when all of a sudden you saw, Banks can actually throw the ball. Onkalad can actually score and take a 10-yard pass and take it to the house. So I think they've built on that, and that's something we haven't seen.
Yeah, we can't be at Tulane every day,
right?
And but one of our colleagues who can, and I know he was on your show too, Gary Smith.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard him on your show raving about the receiving game, and that's the guy who covered
When's
Florida
the last
for
time?
years.
Ryan Grant? I mean, seriously, you know, I mean, that's the last receiver that he was in the NFL with the Redskins. So, yeah, I mean, it's big.
Yeah. Special teams. That's been an Achilles heel.
Oh, you had to go there.
Yeah, got
Ask LSU. Forget Tulane.
Yeah.
Ask LSU. The ability and inability to get 3 points, or to think you can get 3 points inside of the 30-yard line.
To have confidence you can get 3 points.
Man, because we joke about it. I probably even shouldn't say that, but we do. I mean, you get it. You should be able to get inside the 40 and 30 and go, okay, I got 3. And we're doing the games, we're like, this needs to be a touchdown, or you need to get into the 15 and then hope and pray that you don't doink it. And it's crazy, but it's not just their fault. LSU last year got hurt by that, right? I mean, one of the big acquisitions this spring was to get Cole Tracy to kick for the Tigers. So it's not just, I mean, Alabama, the team that won the national championship, right? Their guy missed the kick.
Right.
So I don't know if they're not teaching kicking anymore. Maybe my son needs to go into field goal kicking and I can retire.
I want to let him go.
You know
play
what
golf.
I'm saying? Well, I hear you, but you don't get 2 hit, kicking the ball. But I think it's better.
Yeah.
I think the last time Tulane played in a bowl game, they had a kicker who's currently in the NFL.
Cairo Santos,
Yes.
who Saints fans to this day still think should have been a Saint.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Let's shift gears to LSU. And Brett, I'll start with you. It's been a tumultuous offseason for this team. I mean, the whole narrative on the season changed after the loss to Notre Dame, how they lost, then again the Patrick Surtain defection to Alabama. And it seemed to be eased some by, again, after the LSU camp, where a lot of these top recruits at least gave verbal commitments to LSU. And then, of course, the Joe Burrow acquisition coming in as a grad transfer. But then you talk about the arrest, losing Ed Ingram, the Drake Davis situation, Tyler Taylor involved in the situation up in Georgia. And then the defection of Narcisse and McMillan, which again, I don't think it should not have been unexpected. Whoever was going to be the odd man out, and you felt ultimately one or two of those guys would transfer. But it has been a tough offseason, and I think Tiger fans are a little bit scared, a little bit weary of what's going to happen going forward. Has Ed Orgeron kind of kept this thing together? What are your thoughts on how this has been handled?
You know, I just think that my experience with Ed from near and from afar is that, like, if you look at USC or some other instances where things seem to be going badly, he's been able to rally the troops and exceed expectations. So I would not want to sell him short in that regard. As far as the quarterback goes, on one hand it looks terrible, but I don't know. I mean, if both of these guys, we don't even know if these guys, Burrow and Brennan, are the answer, and then if both of them were to get hurt, I don't know, no matter who they had back there, if they were going to have a good season anyway. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Andre State's not coming to save the day.
It may be a moot point. I mean, you know, we saw Ohio State, of course, they were lucky to have a third-string quarterback who could win a national championship for them, right? You know, that was a couple years ago in a very rare instance. So I'm not that worried about the quarterback situation.
Well, if you got to get down to number 3, you're in trouble anyway, right?
Right, anyway. So, you know, you just got to hope that, it looks to me like Burrow's a projected guy, but we don't really even know yet because they won't say, and they won't even let him talk to the media yet, which is another thing that I'm a little worried about. Why is he so nervous about those guys talking out of turn? You know, especially a guy like Burrow who's already graduated from Ohio State. I mean, he should be able to handle himself in front of the media.
Maybe he's trying to keep Miami guessing.
He could be trying to keep Miami guessing, and if there's one game where you can really keep an opponent guessing, it's the first game in college football because there's no real preseason.
Right, and so, they don't know what the offense looks like, and you don't know what the quarterbacks look like. So again, you do have the element of surprise.
Right, and maybe
I would keep it. Look, I'm in the media, and I would love to know because we talk about it every day, right? But if I put my purple and gold glasses on for a moment, I don't want them telling Miami anything, or the media find out, you know, in 10 days in Arlington when they put them out on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that a guy like Burrow, the coach could tell him, if they ask you questions about yourself and about your past and about your hopes and dreams, that's fine, but just don't tell them anything about how the offense looks or whether you think you're going to start or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that he could get that because he's already got a degree from Ohio State and he's still being hidden away. But, you know, that's a media point of view. I understand it may not matter at all after the first week of the season. Anyway, you know, we'll just have to see what happens there. But the good news for LSU as far as quarterback goes is whoever's throwing the ball appears to have some talent at receiver.
Yes.
We have to see how Giles transitions from that wide open Texas Tech in that conference where the defense is nothing like it is in the SEC. Right. You know, but he had over 1,000 yards there, so maybe he'll do okay. You know, and then the defense I still think looks solid. The offensive line is definitely a concern, and it's at least the guys who are getting arrested. I mean, Ingram really hurts.
Yes.
But
you can overcome Drake Davis and you can overcome Tyler Taylor.
Yeah, I think they can overcome that. And, you know, they're getting it out of the way now instead of later, where all of a sudden, you know, in between regular season game 3 and game 4, you have this kind of distraction and have to replace somebody, you know, in the rotation. So, you know, that it could be worse.
Gus, you have the floor.
Well, I mean, judging by the video that we've seen in the spring or the fall practices, greatest practice thrower I've ever seen in my life, Joe Burrow. I mean, I'm having fun and I'm poking at it because, I mean, some of the tweets I see, you know, here's Burrow with the 3-yard out. Look at the throw. Look at the gun. Look at the arm. In the comments and Twitter, it's, dude, look at him. Like, stop it. An LSU defender's not even on it, you know. But again, it goes to point out the lack of confidence that people have. Like, and I guess that's how I look at it going into the season too. It's funny when you have to bring up and say, hey, well, you have a Randon, you have this defense. I mean, he's completely overlooking. Last I checked, you better. Did no one watch the national championship game? Did anyone else see the other semifinal game? Because they could score, and they had quarterbacks, and they had receivers,
and quality defenses,
and they had beef. I mean, they look like cows out there. I mean, it's like, when did all of a sudden LSU in the narrative start becoming, well, you know, we'll get there, we can do that. Man, has that changed, that narrative, right? 4 or 5 years ago, it's Bama. We'll take care of Ole Miss. Now it's, you're just trying to beat other teams in the SEC West and stuff. What's unique too?
Where does that come from? Is it because Les Miles left the cupboard bare, or is it Orgeron not bringing in the type of class that he should? Or is it a little bit of both?
It's a good question, because what's interesting is you were talking about the O-line concerns here. You saw some of the losses last year. Who's the running back? You've been spoiled by having an NFL run. Who did Les Miles put in charge of recruiting before he got let go? It was Coach O, right? Wasn't he? I mean, when Frank,
he was one of them.
When Wilson left to UTSA, isn't that why you gave Coach O the job? Now, that said, he did strike it this year, right? We have heard a ton about next year's class, which is
verbal commitments, though.
I hear you, and that's why I think it's going to be very interesting to what Brett was talking about when you first initially started this conversation on the Tigers. What's a successful season? I'm not even looking at win-loss record. It's a brutal schedule, and again, changing the narrative. When have you ever looked? How long has it been when you look at an LSU schedule and go, man, I don't know. It never was like that. The one thing you can always say about Les Miles, and he did a couple of weeks ago, right? Or a month ago when he kind of jabbed Coach O, and he goes, I never looked at my team and was nervous at the schedule or schedule. He's like, you're going to play the Tigers that day. We're going to give you hell and all that. That's what Miles brought you, and that was good. Now it's like, this is going to be a tough game. That's changed how they play them. I'm expecting them to lose to Georgia and Alabama. They're better, right? I mean, they have 62 of the 85 scholarship athletes. Georgia are 4 or 5 star players. They're supposed to be. Florida's going to be a tough game. Going to Auburn's a tough game. But if you lose closely or you make some of those games close, the game against Alabama, I mean, LSU fans are like, we're close, and then they lost already. But my point is, if they play like that, Eric, then I think most of those commitments stay. They go get hammered.
Right. You know, Brett, I think the narrative changes a bit, at least for a short period of time, maybe just a week or so, if they beat Miami. You know, I think a lot of what we saw in the offseason is put away. You close the book on it, and you move forward. If you don't beat Miami, I think that narrative continues, that this is a program in disarray and spiraling out of control.
I don't know about disarray and spiraling out of control, but definitely in kind of a rebuilding mode, and you're not sure if you have the right guy, as head coach. But yeah, I know people don't want to hear it, but I realize Saban is kind of a juggernaut, but before he arrived, Alabama was in the same predicament.
True.
And Georgia, Mark Richt got run out of town.
Yes.
So the best programs go through these cycles, and maybe LSU is in one. I mean, that's really what it's all about, is we're trying to figure out if they are in one of these cycles, and we just hope that it doesn't go so low where it's like a 4-win season instead of a 7-win season. Maybe they'll surprise us and win 9 or 10 games this year, and maybe they'll have a huge upset along the way. Who knows,
43 seconds. Does the narrative change if they beat Miami?
No, because Auburn's 2 weeks after that, and that's the SEC game that's on the road. Now, you win those 2, and then you're 3-0, and then, absolutely, you feel a lot better yourself. You lose both of those, because, again, Miami's ranked 8th. I know a lot of people don't want to buy them, but they're ranked 8th, and Auburn's ranked in the top 10. So if you go 1-2, then...
Is this the only place anybody's buying Miami? That's what I wonder. I mean, is Louisiana not buying?
They're ranked in the top 10. Somebody's buying them.
Yeah, because the rest of the country obviously believes that they've got a strong club. Right around the corner, guys. You'll be on the sidelines next Thursday, a week from tonight.
Looking
and of
forward
course,
to it.
before we know it, Saints and LSU.
I'm with him, though. The Auburn game is really where the narrative could change. I think if they beat Miami.
Yeah, you go out there and win in the playoffs.
But they always play terrible at Auburn, don't they? I mean, even in their good years, they've had a rough time.
Brett Martel, the Associated Press, Gus Kattengell, ESPN 100.3 FM. Thanks for being with us on the panel tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, this is a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television, that is statewide. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2 in the iHeart Radio app. That is noon to 2 weekdays. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can be seen at ericasher.com as well. Again, thanks to our good friends Gus Kattengell and also Brett Martel, also to the WLAE production staff, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.